Hi, hello, welcome once again, welcome back to Voice Notes. Thanks for joining in, and I'm happy to say that we have reached the end of the series Voice Notes, my life journal, where I talk things concerning a resolute mind. This has been quite an insightful experience and journey for me, having explored different aspects of a resolute mind. This has also helped me in my journey towards developing a mind that is more resolved, more at peace, more settled, especially where I confront the challenge of just talking. So I do what I would like to go over in a nutshell the things talked about and what I have learned from this experience. I would like to reiterate here that I have identified a difference or the difference between the talent and a skill, and usually when we have a problem, we can overcome this problem through the acquisition of some new skill. And so it is quite useful learning skills along our life journey. I've also mentioned about practicing something and really employing joyful mechanisms or joyful ways, joyful methods when practicing something, to just to ensure that we are not feeling pressed or under pressure, and we can allow ourselves to be more involved and to do this for a much longer duration than actually wanting to stop whatever activity that one is doing. I have also identified sometimes taking or sometimes opting for a silent response, being silent. And this is not always easy to do, especially when in a chaotic environment. But I did stress how there are benefits towards having a silent mind, having a silent spirit. And sometimes the outcomes surprise us. When we keep silent or we be still, sometimes we are surprised by what the outcome actually turns out to be, going far beyond what we can ever imagine or anticipate. This also goes in line with being silent for the purpose of increasing awareness, increasing sensitivity to what is there. Sometimes when we are busy, we sometimes miss the tiny details or the nuances of the environment that we live in. But when we are silent and we stay still and we try to go more internally through internal reflections, through contemplation, through meditation, we become more sensitized, we become more aware of the things that are actually right in front of us. And it is in this silent place we can determine answers, or answers become more clear to our conscious mind. I've also touched on the area of being the odd one out. This one was an interesting one for me because sometimes you can feel conflict when you have to do a task or there is something to be done and you just see there is a party of one, which is yourself. And this, I have went through this numerous times, but I do stress here that it is not always a bad case of being alone. It is not always a bad case of being single. Sometimes we need to connect with our inner selves to truly pull out the answers that we are looking for to help us solve the problems that are immediately around us. And in being alone, this actually helps us to hear that inner voice, that inner man which comes from that place of vastness, which comes from this place of openness, that we can hear ourselves more clearly, so that we can act in accordance with what we hear, and so we move more in alignment with our whole selves and not just a piece of ourselves. I have also identified failure as something not to frown upon also. Usually when we think of failure, we think it's a bad event, we think it's a bad thing. However, things do come in pairs, and so we don't fail all the time, and we don't win all of the time. There are sometimes we win, and there are sometimes we just have to lose. But it is the failure that allows us to see the whole picture, because when we do fail, it reminds us of what we still need, what knowledge we still need to acquire. And so learning is a progressive state. There is always something new to learn, and failure reminds us of this piece of information. So it's more to adopt a learning mindset, knowing that we can utilize failure to check ourselves and to keep rechecking ourselves until we learn to make minute adjustments, sometimes major adjustments, to go towards the direction we are looking, or we are heading towards, or the objective that we are trying to attain. And which also brings me to this other point, that the answer, whatever you're looking for, is always right in front of you. It doesn't matter where you look, the answer is always there. But it is more to pull back the layers of labels and names of what we know to be, and really think through to see the natural elements of stuff, looking at their natural state, and in that way we can identify our answer more clearly. What was also interesting for me to talk about was logic versus reality. And again, we usually think that all things logical must be real, and this is not always the case. And likewise, not everything that we can understand, this is sometimes our reality, and this is just something we have to accept, that we do not have all the answers like at the fingertip, and sometimes some things may not make sense to us, but yet this is a very real reality. And this taps into the essence of faith, which allows one to still trust in a process even though one may not completely understand the case in itself. I have also talked about life as a simulation project, very interesting and also very important one, because I've went an alternate path to what most may think life to be, because of my wilderness experience, because of the obstructions in my life. I have been forced to revisit my life, to reflect on my life for a very long time, to see that life is indeed a project. There is a beginning and there is an end, and throughout life we do have certain desires within us, we have certain objectives to fulfill, but this can only be ascertained when one sits with the self in silence and with much examination of self to determine the specific instructions. One sits with the self to determine the specific instructions, that is the law that is embedded inside of the inner man, that is embedded inside of the inner self, which is the eternal self. It is in this place one is able to find his teacher, who is there to guide him along his course, along his path, along his ways. And in doing this, one need not be anxious. one need not be in conflict when one finally decides to align his actions with what he sees and the instructions that are given to him from his internal space. And that is all. That is all that we have talked about. And I hope that these sessions were helpful to you as it were for me. And I thank you for sitting in and listening to these sessions. Thank you. And I hope you have an awesome rest of day, rest of week, and also awesome year. I thank you very much and see you soon. Until next time. Adios.